Hi, welcome to episode 13. Lucky 13. Last week we started in on George Herbert and we will continue tonight. Tip in my hand here, guys. I am a big George Herbert fan. That's why he's the first poet in this sonnet series where we're going to do two in a row. If you're interested, you can go back and tune in to episode 12 for more ideas on why he might appeal to me. But I think you'll get the general idea just hearing this poem tonight. So without further ado, here is prayer. Prayer, the church's banquet, angel's age, God's breath in man returning to his birth, the soul in paraphrase, heart in pilgrimage, the Christian plummet sounding heaven and earth, engine against the Almighty, sinner's tower, reverse thunder, Christ's side piercing spear, the 6 days world transposing in an hour, a kind of tune which all things hear and fear, softness and peace and joy and love and bliss, exalted manna, gladness of the best, heaven in ordinary, man well dressed, the Milky Way, the bird of paradise, church bells beyond the stars heard, the soul's blood, the land of spices, something understood. So I feel like this poem is very modern, very contemporary, perhaps not exactly in the topic and the subject, perhaps not in all the vocabulary or phrasing, but certain aspect of its style, I think, is modern. It's very seems to have a kind of associations of the poet jumping from one idea, one image to another, without any kind of intervening fabric or connective tissue, just free associating almost. The structure of this poem is what's called, it's a sonnet, but it's also a litany, which means it's just a big list of stuff. And that type of litany poem we see quite frequently employed today in free verse, where we'll see long lists of the poem of the poet or the speaker of the poem associating, making connections to things, and just listing experiences or ideas as they apparently come into their head. Now this poem was written quite some time ago, so it's surprising to see how vivid, how intense the images unfold. There's some really memorable lines or phrases. The soul and paraphrase, I think, is something that really tells us a lot almost about how poems work and what poems are about. This sonnet itself seems to contain a prayer so effectively that it could be one, and it could be discussing the function of poetry as well. The 6 days world transposing in an hour. Obviously, it's a Sunday service. You're at church on Sunday, but it could also refer to the 6 days, the 6 lines of the sestet following that octave. Now, we could quibble and say that this poem doesn't contain a volta, which is very true. It's a fairly radical departure in that sense. Unlike Redemption, which we looked at before, after thinking about that, I kind of concluded that Redemption, George Herbert's Redemption, did have a volta. And some other poems that we've discussed, John Clare's Ants, also does seem to have a volta, however unconventional it is. But here, the volta, maybe there's a slight tonal shift after a kind of tune which all things hear and fear to softness. So again, we have that trochee of softness, so we would expect an IM, and it's a trochaic syllable there. So maybe he's tipping his hand a little bit there that this is as much of a turn we're going to get. But again, I mean, the poem just kind of continues on its litany structure. Perhaps some of the threat or crisis of the first 8 lines, Sinner's Tower, Christ's side-piercing spear. Some of these most tense moments seem to become resolved and return to more banal things, but not eternal things like we would expect from a sonnet. Heaven in ordinary, man well dressed. These are the speaker's attention and spirit returned back to his body completely. I suppose, maybe not. Maybe Milky Way, Bird of Paradise. So I don't really know where I'm going. I think the enjoyment in this poem is the wildness of it. It seems to stretch against the conventions of the sonnet so much that they would snap. It seems to disregard any sense of containment of the heart's reaching, the pilgrimage of the heart, and kind of does whatever the crap it wants. I think it's in that way kind of transgressive, and I admire that. I admire that part of this sonnet for a sacred topic. It kind of throws a lot of elbows and just kind of does what it wants to do. It's a very, very satisfying ending. The land of spices, something understood. That something understood. It just kind of sticks with you. You're going to hear that line, something understood. Something's going to happen in your life, something difficult or strange, or just contemplating how weird is that. A little bit of déjà vu, perhaps, and you're going to say, the land of spices, something understood. And I can't guarantee that's what you're going to say to yourself, but I've certainly had that sensation here and there where stuff starts to kind of lock into place a little bit, and I think about this poem. I heard this poem first when I was in grad school. It was probably 2002, I guess. And aspects of it, some of these ideas have just kind of stuck in me since then and keep returning in various ways. Maybe it'll be that way for you too. Maybe this will be a poem you return to. I think there's a lot for the contemporary poet to learn from George Herbert's intensity. So, thanks for sharing this poem and sharing your time with me. I always enjoy talking about this stuff. And stay tuned for our next episode. And have a great one.